Hello, and good day to you. Welcome to Theology on Tap. I was just thinking about the words good and evil. Right, that's what the choices that we have in life. Are we going to be good or are we going to be evil? And what is striking to me is that in Book of Genesis, we know that Adam and Eve didn't have that. Right, they didn't really have the knowledge of good and evil, and yet they were happy, doing their own thing, enjoying the Garden of Eden. But all they had to do was stay away from that tree of knowledge of good and evil, right? That's all they had to do, but they couldn't do it. They eat it. The reason behind it, I don't know. I mean, we could talk about that next time, but they ate it and they became to understand what is good and what is evil. And, you got to ask yourself, what is so wrong about knowing what is good and evil? I mean, is that what we try to tell our children and other people is that you need to know what is good. You need to know what is bad, what is evil, so we could stay away from those kind of things. But I guess God in the beginning really didn't want us to know, so we could be happy. So I guess it is better for us not to know, but too late. We do know what is good and evil. So I guess temptation was that we could become like God, knowing what is good and evil, and we could to choose what is good and what is evil. Is that true? I don't know. It doesn't really seem to say anything about our good is different than God's good. It's just that there was a knowledge of good and evil. So we have that now. And what is interesting is ever since that knowledge came into us, that we tend to choose to do things that is somewhat evil, right? And so when we get to Genesis chapter 6, what we see is that, right before the flood happens, God looks upon the world and he regretted that he created human beings because he saw that the wickedness was rampant, and that I think he actually said every inclination of man were evil. Every one was evil. So what does that mean? When you look at Sodom and Gomorrah, it says the whole town was wicked and evil. So what does that mean? That everybody was like murdering one another? But that sounds impossible, because it seems to me like in order to have a city like Sodom, or a city, and in order for people to get along and to I guess live, you still have to get along a little bit. And I think people did somewhat get along. They had to have in order to survive. It's not that people are just stealing and killing and one another all the time. We can't exist that way. Some people said that Sodom and Gomorrah, or the wickedness, was as so bad that it kind of was like Las Vegas of today. I don't know if Vegas is, a lot of bad things do happen there, you could say, or evil happens there, wickedness. But at the same time, most people that I know that goes to Vegas or live there they're really good people. So how do you explain that? What is good and what is evil? So, I don't think we need to really go over what the word good means, because I think everybody know what is good. Being kind to one another, treat each other the way that we want to be treated. Good is simpler. So what is evil? And when I was growing up, the word evil meant that you had to bring harm to somebody else. In a way, in the physical sense, you have to murder and to kill. And if you think that every single human being were evil in that way, then you can't really trust anybody. You have to, watch your back all the time. You have to, carry a gun or a knife just to protect yourself. But then if I was evil all the time too, then I would be looking at other people to murder and things like that. So I don't think evil means that. So I looked it up, the word evil in Hebrew, and these are the definitions, all right? And these are the definitions of the word evil. It just basically means bad. That's it. Disagreeable, malignant, let's say sad, unhappy, unkind, miserable, distress, injury. That's evil. So evil doesn't necessarily mean that you have this, making an attempt to bring harm to other people and murder people and have the desire to just steal and all that kind of stuff. It could also mean that, some of it, I'm sure that is a part of it, but it means just, sadness, disagreeable, miserable, in distress, sad, even unhappy. That's part of being evil. So in that case, yeah, you could say every inclination of mankind is still evil, because that majority of people, or not majority, a lot of people are sad, they're unhappy, miserable, unjust, disagreeable, definitely, right? That's why all the stupid things that's going on in America with people hating on each other happens, because it is people are disagreeing with one another and they just really get upset. See, that's part of being evil, right? When you get to New Testament in Greek, the word evil means full of labor, being annoyed, hardships of life, right? In the physical sense, being diseased. I mean, that's all part of evil. Constant pain, trouble, tribulation. That's evil. And Jesus said, in this life we're going to have tribulations, but we should overcome that and rejoice in it. So in a way, what I think it means is that evil is something like, you could be unhappy, you're in distress, you could be in a disagreement with somebody. It's just the way we feel and the way we think, unfair, injustice. When you start thinking like that, it could build up to something. It could build up to something that hatred would come in, and then you know how Yoda's talked about that, right? Something leads to this, and that. It could lead to murder and to thieving, and something that we will consider just terrible. That's something that we got to do away with people that we got to put in prison or a hospital, that kind of stuff. But it all starts with evil that is very simple, just being unhappy or disagreeable. Why not? And that's the beginning. That's what Jesus looked at when he came to earth. He looked at the people and he said, well, you guys are just concerned with the things that are on the outside, with the law. You shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do that. So as long as we didn't murder somebody, with that we're okay. But what Jesus said was, no, he looks at the heart. See, you say thou shalt not commit adultery, but Jesus said do not commit adultery in your heart, because that's why it all kind of begins. Now, I know that it's impossible to get rid of all kind of disagreements, unhappiness, to the thoughts that comes into our mind that's so negative. What if people you disagree with? I disagree with people about theology all the time, but I don't hate them and stuff. But there are people that get really offended by my theology, and there's some insults were thrown, like I'm a false teacher, a heretic, and whatnot. You better be careful, God judgment, and all that kind of thing. And where is that kind of disagreement to a point where they just want to cause harm to somebody else? Where does that come from? See, that's part of evil. You see, that is why Jesus came to knock down the wall, to help us all try to get along, to help us control the things that are in our mind and our thoughts, to control our hearts, so that any kind of unhappiness and disagreements and whatnot will not affect us in a way that it could lead us to do something that we may regret later on. I think that's the warning that Jesus gave us. So let's start with not looking at all the bad things, like big bad things that's going on in the world, but look within our hearts to understand, is there a thought of unhappiness? Are we in distress? Are we miserable? Are we angry at God, angry at other people? What else was there? Are we sad? Are we unhappy? Why? Are we like that? That is why I think Jesus said, believe in me, he said, and I'll give you an abundance of life. He didn't say rich life or whatever, but abundance. So regardless of the circumstances and situation, that we could find joy and happiness. I think that's what, that's something that Jesus addressed. And as Christians, or even if you're not Christians, let's work with those little unhappiness and little negative thoughts and those things that come into our mind, and just nip it, at the butt. I don't even know what that means. Nip it at the butt. What does that mean? Let's get rid of that. Let's push aside all that kind of stuff from our minds and our hearts, so that it will not lead to something that's bad. But what Jesus said is faith. If we believe, if we hold on to God's faith, if we hold on to Christ, it could also lead to righteousness, right? So Let's do that. And Jesus said, if you have just a tiny bit of faith, if you just have a little bit of hope, or whatnot, it could lead to something wonderful and great. So that's the change that we need to make in our hearts, in our minds. And I hope we could all do that today. So, are we unhappy? Are we in distress? Are we hating on someone? Are we not getting along? Is there negative thoughts? Are we in misery? Are we down on ourselves because of injustice to whatever it may be? Let's turn around. Let's find peace in Jesus Christ. I think that's important, right? So it could lead to something wonderful. All right. Well, thanks for joining me today. God bless you. I'll see you next time.